Hello, my beautiful friends. It's been a hot minute since I've seen you, but I apologize. I have been so busy with the start of the semester and getting everything up and running, and I've been away a little bit, and um I couldn't gather my thoughts into a particular message that I thought was edifying and motivational, because I had so many things going on. But I spent the weekend, our Labor Day. If you're in the United States, we celebrate Labor Day. It's kind of the end of the summer before, school starts. Some schools start right before that, and then some schools start right after. Um, but college, of course, goes back before that. And so this weekend I was down at our family's property down in the Tangier Sound in Deal Island, Maryland, the island as we call it. And the weekend started off rough, right? So it is a 5 hour drive from our house here in eastern Pennsylvania, and a group of our friends go, and the cabin's owned by my uncle-in-law, and it's a family cabin that's been passed down. And so my friend and I went down first because I was playing my pipes at a few different events, and I wanted to get there a little bit early because I like to be able to relax a little bit. And so my friend and I went down, and I took my pipes and my kilt and all that stuff so that we'd be down there early. So we get down there, and then my husband and his buddy were coming down with our truck, with our camper and our kayaks. And in the middle of at the halfway mark, pretty much, our truck broke down. It lost its brakes. So, of course, they got to the side of the road and they were safe and everything was okay. But um, we have the highest tier of AAA because we travel a lot by car, and so AAA would come and get it, and they would tow it to the island, but they wouldn't tow the camper. So, um, in the meanwhile, he's called me, and like I always have my phone on me, but I had just put the phone on the charger and was sitting out on the beach and relaxing, and like none of us had our phones on it, and like Dave's trying to call and he can't get through to us, and then finally, like he was like a little panicked, like, what do you mean you don't have your phone on you? Like, why would you turn your phone off? I'm like, well, I was fixing to take a nap on the beach. That's why. So, anyway, long story short, we have a Jeep down the island that just kind of hauls the boats around to the different marinas, and doesn't really go that far anywhere. And so we get that so that we can go get him because it has a hitch on it. Way to him, that breaks down. So now I have to get AAA to come get us. And, Dave had to get a hotel room, which is a whole story, up where he was in Dover. And Uncle Lee and I are waiting. Uncle Lee's 76, right? We're waiting in this parking lot for AAA. It was like about 9 o'clock when this happened. And then, about midnight, and we knew that we thought that they weren't coming for us until 1 a.m. So we were kind of just chilling out, taking little naps, making phone calls to get arrangements to have the trailer hauled down the next day by some buddies that were coming down the next day that had a hitch and all this stuff. So 12 o'clock comes and the new shift changes, and this very nice woman from AAA calls and says, I don't know how this fell through the cracks, but nobody's coming for you, right? What? Nobody's coming for me? I'm in a parking lot in the middle of nowhere in Delaware. What do you mean no one's coming for me? What do you mean no one's coming for us? So then people from the island had to come up and get us, and we did a keyless tow or whatever the heck they call it. I mean, it was such a rigmarole, and it could, you could let something like that damper your whole weekend. The next day, the guys that were still in Pennsylvania that were on their way down that had a truck and a hitch, they picked up the camper, they picked up Dave, they didn't have the right they didn't have, I don't know, ball size or something for the hitch. They had to go to AutoZone and buy another hitch, or whatever it's called. Like, it was like this big production. But eventually, everybody got down and all of our equipment got down. And then Dave had to fix the truck. I don't know anything about cars, but he was able to fix it. And we had a good weekend. And the sunsets were incredible. It was the skipjack Heritage Festival, which I absolutely love. And they have a skipjack race, and the skipjacks, which used to be plentiful in numbers, these are oyster dredging boats. Now there aren't many, and there definitely aren't many working ones. There's ones that aren't working, that don't work as skipjacks, but are more museums or historical, and then there are skipjacks that work. And they have a boat docking contest, which is super, super fun to watch. And those have to be actual working boats, so crab boats that collect the crab pots around stuff, and they come from all the area places, and it's just fun. It's just a really fun weekend, and but you could have let that whole starting experience ruin it, right? You could have, I mean, thankfully we had Premier AAA, and it really didn't cost. I mean, we obviously tipped the drivers that hauled our cars, but you didn't have to, like, we didn't shell out a bazillion dollars in towing because we had AAA. We did have to buy a lot of car parts for our truck, to get it working. But all in all, I mean, even though it sucked, it turned out okay. And sometimes I think, perspective is everything. You could definitely let it ruin your weekend, or you could laugh, right? You could just, like, every time a new thing happened, you'd just kind of be like, oh, of course, and you'd chuckle. And it's really about perspective, and it's really about how you let things impact you. And I think right now in our culture and our society, there's a lot coming at us from all different directions, whatever it is you believe, religiously, spiritually, politically. There's a lot that comes at us, and it's our perspective that really matters. And a little bit of resilience, a little bit of thick skin, a little bit of wind breaking, right? You have to be able to take what's happening, or whatever, and be strong enough to withstand it, because the wind will change, right? If you learn anything about skipjacks, and I don't know anything about sailing, I've been on a skipjack only to play bagpipes. I've never actually ridden on one. I don't know a thing about sailing. But what I do know from watching them from the beach is that the wind changes and you have to make adjustments. But if you're good at navigating, and if you're good at reading the wind, and you're good and your ship, and your boat, and how to navigate that wind, you will make it to shore. You will make it into the harbor. Maybe you'll have a broken thing. I don't know any of the terms that go with sailing. The jib, the mast, I don't know, whatever. Maybe it'll be broken, right? Maybe the storm was rough and something will come in broken. But you will get in. You just have to stay the course. You have to make your adjustments, and you have to call it when you have to call it. You have to call it, right? And so I think anytime we're struggling, sometimes it's hard to see the finish line. Sometimes it's you think this is the route, but the wind's taking me off course, and I don't know what to do. Your goal is to get back on course. Your goal is to finish, and to keep things in perspective and take each challenge one at a time. When you looked at the whole, start of the weekend, overall was overwhelming, right? This truck broke down. They wouldn't take the camper, then the Jeep broke down, and the great kid that picked up our Jeep was like, I would have taken your camper. And you're like, why couldn't you have been the guy assigned to the truck, right? Like, it's all perspective, and being, eventually it does work out. And just having the skills and the resilience and the thick skin to make it through. And where do we get that from, right? Well, part of it is our own inner core of whatever it is we do, whether it's a spiritual practice or a religious practice or whatever, deep breathing, meditation, whatever it is that grounds you, earthing, whatever it is you do to ground you, and then to not get overwhelmed by the overall situation, but just take the little pieces as they come. Take this gust of wind, not the entire storm. I think that helps. And then forgive yourself if it's not perfect, right? Like, we don't all, I will say that I wasn't happy. I don't like to drive at night, and the island has absolutely no lights. I'm not a fan of driving at night, and I was a little like irritated that I had to go out and drive this Jeep that we never take anywhere except to the marina. I wasn't the most thrilled about having to do that, but you do it because you have to do it, and I didn't want my husband stranded, in the middle of nowhere. When I talked to him, there was a whole bunch of sirens going on behind him. I thought he was like in the middle of the apocalypse, and he's like stuck at this Wawa. My husband wears hearing aids, so he didn't have his hearing aid charger. He didn't have his phone charger. There was all this stuff that it was could potentially go wrong because he wouldn't be able to hear or get in contact with anybody. So, you take each piece as it comes. You solve the little pieces, and sometimes you just don't look at the big picture. The big picture is there and you're aware of it, but you handle the little pieces so that it fits into the bigger puzzle as you need to, as the pieces need to. So I think the message for today for me is just be resilient, have thick skin. This too shall pass, right? Whatever it is, whatever you're struggling with. And then try to find joy and silver linings and everything. Try to find the upside, the positive side. What can you look at? How can you look at it from a positive side? So I am wishing you all the very best in light and love. Have an amazing week, and I'll see you sooner than I saw you this last time. Be well. Take care.